When I was around 12, I managed to get my hands on a PS2, a memory card, a controller, and a game that would leave a big impact on the gaming portion of my heart and memories, Kingdom Hearts 2. Lots of things have changed for me since that day, the loss of the ones who raised me and eventually becoming someone who raises their own, at least in my reality, 2 pandemics that fucked up the world, but one thing that has stayed the same is my love for this game. So for the 150th entry in the Mounty Presents playlist, how about I talk about something good for this milestone? Which is the nice way of saying I was gonna do Sailor Moon Crystal, but Sailor Moon Cosmos' dub got delayed again, so I had to scavenge something together. Wait, that wasn't supposed to be said. One other thing I will say before we begin is that I'll be looking at the final mix version of 2, which is basically an enhanced version of the base game with some new stuff sprinkled in. Think Pokemon Platinum or Emerald, but for Kingdom Hearts, basically. It's the version that's the most accessible nowadays, it adds in some quality of life fixes, and I'm too lazy to grab a PS2 copy of the base game. Wait, that also wasn't supposed to be. Anyways, let's begin. So because this is a sequel to the first game, naturally that means there's some stuff in the prior games I should explain first to get everyone caught up to speed.
So a kid named Sora is on an island with his friends, Riku and Kairi, and also some Final Fantasy X characters. Sora, Riku, and Kairi want to travel to other places. Riku fucks things up. This will not be the only time. The trio are separated. Sora gets Goofy and Donald and a long metal stick to beat up shadow creatures, while Riku works with Angelina Jolie to wake up Kairi, who has lost her heart in a spiritual sense. Sora tries to find his friends. Riku fucks things up by falling into darkness and eventually getting possessed by Cosmodor, the Seeker of Darkness. Sora also shoves an evil version of the long metal stick into his chest and dies for 5 minutes before becoming human again. Also, Kairi is alive and a princess of light. The feds find the Seeker of Darkness and flashbang him to death. This also results in Sora and his friends getting separated again.
Okay, now we're oh right, chain of memories. Play it again.
Sora gets mindfucked by a new evil called Organization 13 to the point of having to spend a year getting his memories fixed by a suspended animation, while Riku beats up Cosmodor and is finally free from his influence, until KH2, because once again, Riku fucks things up.
Okay, now we're caught up. So KH2 starts up with a new character named Roxas, and we see him doing a lot of things kids back in the 2000s did during summer. Exploring new places and mysteries, hanging out with friends, doing odd jobs. But as time goes on, we begin to see that this place isn't normal, and something is also up with Roxas, as he's having dreams of Sora, indicating that there might be some relation amongst the two. Cut to a few days later of quests and beating people up, including Axel. I know, such an original joke. And we find out that the town that we're in is a virtual world, and Roxas is actually a part of Sora, who ultimately is forced to return to him in order to properly awaken Sora from his suspended animation. How is this possible? Well, Chain of Memories did hint at this, but KH2 properly explains the concept of nobodies, which forms from the will of a person after their heart falls into darkness, with said heart creating a heartless, those shadow creatures I mentioned earlier. Basically, the heart creates a heartless, and the rest of your body turns into a nobody, but depending on your will's strength, it can create an entirely different person. In Roxas' case, he was created after Sora stabbed himself in the first game to free Kairi's heart. Also, Naminé, that girl from Chain of Memories that looks like Kairi but is blonde, that's actually Kairi's nobody. So yes, Kairi and Sora have strong enough wills to create nobodies that don't turn to these things, and instead become their own person. Confused yet? Ah, don't worry. The game gives you plenty of time to beat up enemies and have fun before giving you more information, which is good not only for those who just want to play the game, but it also works for those who enjoy stories and or want to process the information given to them. It works for both sides, which is great. So now that we got Sora back, the main story is about stopping Organization 13 and getting Riku and Kairi back. It's a simple but effective story premise, but what really helps the story is the expanded world building that makes this universe far more interesting than just being a Disney and Square crossover.
Say fellas, did somebody mention the door to darkness?
For instance, in KH1, it was believed that once Ansem was defeated, the Heartless were effectively dead. Well, with this game, it's revealed that, oh no, Heartless will always exist as long as there's evil in one's heart, meaning that they will always be a problem Sora will have to deal with, which is really interesting to me. The explanation of the nobodies is also really great, since now it opens up a lot of interesting ideas and characters, as well as the dread and intrigue of a character that has no heart, but has the emotions that come with being human. And then later on in the series we find out that nobodies can grow hearts, which a younger me would have called the retcon or something like that. But I look at it more so as these nobodies just didn't know they could have done so until that point. But yeah, the nobodies are a really fascinating concept, and I'm glad KH2 explained it properly, since now it makes me wonder what the villains in Chain of Memories were thinking internally, since they are also nobodies, but I digress. We also find out that Ansem the Seeker of Darkness wasn't the real Ansem, but instead was a Heartless of Xehanort that stole the name from a professor named Ansem, who was researching the heart for a while, which is really interesting for me. There's a lot more examples I can bring up, but I'd rather not pad out the runtime, longer than I need to at least. Needless to say, I love the expanded lore and world building on top of the great story in this game, and I became a lot more interested in the KH universe because of this game. So that's a nice bonus on top of this. But the story is not the only thing that makes a game, so let's move on to the other elements. Can I just say that the graphics are really fucking good for the time? The art style is appealing to the eyes, the character models are great in both design and variety, the lighting is top notch, the backgrounds are great, even minor details like Timeless River adding in the static to the audio to replicate the 30s cartoons was a great touch, as was seeing the original Donald, Goofy, and Beat designs. Oh, right, yeah, I forgot about that. Pete is finally brought into the series as Maleficent's assistant, and he exists. He's not bad, not great, he just exists. Even Sora's outfit is a thing I love. Not only do the colors match the darker themes of the game's story, but it also works from a color theory perspective when you consider that black is the fusion of all colors, and depending on the amount used, red, blue, and yellow can also make a darkish gray/black mixture. And what are the first three forms Sora gets in base KH2? Red for Valor, blue for Wisdom, and yellow for Master. I do get why people like the original design more, or KH3's design for Sora though, and I also like them. Hence why I'm not saying the KH2 outfit is my favorite, because I love all three main outfits equally. Actually, speaking of the drives, let's talk about that, because that's another thing I love about this game. So during the playthrough, you'll come across 4 transformations, 5 in Final Mix, and each have their own playstyles that are all fun to use and experiment with. Valor is based upon more so aerial combat, Wisdom is mainly for long-range combat and highly strengthens your magic, Master Form is a mix of both Wisdom and Valor, but also great for crowd control due to the faster speed and wider range of attacks. Limit Form, exclusive to Final Mix, is for those who like the abilities from the first Kingdom Hearts like Dodge Roll and some of the special attacks like Ragnarok or Ars Arcanum, and Final Form is basically a combination of Valor, Wisdom, and Master, with the only exception of the lack of long-range attacks and Wisdom. But it manages to make up for that by effectively giving Sora 2 Keyblades that shred a lot of enemies to pieces just by using his mind. It's fucking incredible. All of these forms can also be enhanced much further than before through leveling those forms up, and the higher those forms are in levels, you can get access to one of their abilities in base Sora. Needless to say, I love this little incentive. Not only do these forms get stronger the more you use them, but it also rewards base Sora with some new tricks, opening up a lot more options while in combat or in the overworld, which I can greatly appreciate. That being said, there is a cost to these drive forms. Sometimes, you transform into anti-form Sora. You know, the Dark Sora from the first game. They basically just use the same model except with the older Sora, which is fast as fuck. But your damage is so middling compared to the other forms, you can't revert back until it runs out, or you leave the screen, and you can't use magic. Now, I get the reason why, since they didn't want you to steamroll the game with these powerful forms. And they do give you a risk to these insane rewards. However, it is slightly annoying to have happen. KH2 also gives the summons its own separate tab this time around, not counting 1.5, although that is also really cool, and those that did return can also be leveled up. But the most you get out of those is just having the summon on screen for longer, and increased magic for the summons attacks. Although, you don't need to get gems to get these new summons, as you'll get them throughout the course of the story, so that's good. We also got some new spells that are great to use. Magnet is great for crowd control, and Reflect is fucking busted, since it can not only protect you from an attack, but it redirects the damage to anyone in its range. This is so incredible, it was effectively removed in later games. Now, Gravity Stop and Arrow have been removed, and that is unfortunate, but I think what we have instead are still great options for combat, and even some of the rework spells like Blizzard and Fire work really well, especially Fire during the Demyx fights. Good shit. However, I do get why others aren't a fan of this change. I just don't agree with it. Speaking of changes, one other change to the combat is the addition of reaction commands that make the battle feel more cinematic than it actually is, and it also adds in a bit of extra damage. Even on repeat playthroughs, these commands never got old for me, as it still managed to retain a high level of flash and detail, as well as the extra crunch in damage that makes it incredibly memorable every time I use them. Less so memorable and or great to me are the limits. So, the limits are similar to reaction commands, in that they are flashy move and do damage, but they also use up all your magic, and depending on if you have the limits set to the same button as your reaction commands, you may hit that by accident instead of the reaction command. Not fun, considering it uses up all your MP. Oops. Now, I'll admit that the idea of doing a team attack with your allies is a great one, as is the combo meter going up, and it can sometimes get you out of a tricky attack the boss throws your way, but I'm just not a fan of the execution. Speaking of execution, however, the soundtrack is fucking incredible. The remixes of not only the Disney songs, but songs from KH1 and Chain of Memories, the original songs made for KH2, and the opening song, Sanctuary/Passion, are fantastic songs from not only a rhythm and beat perspective, but also composition, and lyrics. Hell, even after all these years, the encounter gets my blood pumping in a good way, though that might also be because of how it's first brought in, with Scar's revival as a Heartless, with music amping up, while Pete monologues about how Scar is transformed and the devastation he will bring, capped off with a powerful chorus as Simba and Sora take on the fallen king. Chills, just chills. And yes, that is cringe. Welcome to the channel. But funny enough, the encounter isn't even my favorite song in this game. That honor goes towards the final boss theme, Darkness of the Unknown. When I first got to this song, 12-year-old me thought this was really cool, but now that I'm much older, I can appreciate it a lot more. The first phase starts off with a slow burn, as the instruments begin to amp up in intensity, and then the song starts to get faster, as the composition gets more chaotic and intense, which continues with the introduction of the violin to the song, adding in a more cold, fragile, emotional side to the song, as the song continues to pick up in intensity, culminating in the final portion with the rhythm and beats slow down, and the song begins to take on a more sad tone, as if this is the death throes of someone's life. And sure enough, it is. Throughout this final portion of the game, you are effectively dismantling Xemnas bit by bit, starting with his organization, then his castle, then his throne, and finally, his life. This felt like less of a boss fight and more of a film where you witness the downfall of Xemnas, capped off with the climax of him fading into nothingness, and seeing that final cinematic before the credits roll. This looked so fucking incredible back in the day, and it still looks great now. And to think, almost every cutscene in KH3 has a similar style quality to it. That's insane! If 12-year-old me saw that, they would have their mind figuratively blown. Actually, let me break character for a moment. This final portion of KH2 means a lot to me. This 4-act structure with things ramping up with each subsequent act and getting more and more crazy is an aspect I loved seeing. So much so that I tried to replicate it myself in a lot of my works at varying degrees of success. Some of you may have noticed it in the likes of Part 4 of the David What If, but I've also attempted it in other works like Pokemon World Revolution, for those who remember that shit show, Team DPAS, and many others. When a moment in media is so powerful you want to replicate it, that's a sign of how great it is. Well, at least to me. But yeah, I genuinely love this final portion of KH2. It's the highlight of the game for me every time I play it. Anyways, back to the DMP character real quick. However, this game is not perfect. No game is. There are some issues that I do have with KH2, but it doesn't detract too much from my overall enjoyment of the game. Regardless, however, I'm going down the list. While the combat is very fast, fluid, the hits are extra crunchy, making for an overall fun experience, there are some moments during said combat where you effectively have to wait. And that shit is not fucking fun. Considering every other enemy up to these points didn't have these moments of effectively waiting to attack, this got fucking annoying for me. The Atlantica world is another mark against this game. It is optional unless you want the ultimate Keyblade or are going for 100% completion, but it is annoying to go through. Now, I do understand why that is, as Nomura, the creator of Kingdom Hearts, laid out the story of this world as a musical, and as such made the gameplay match the musical aesthetic, but just because there's a reason doesn't mean I have to like it, and I don't with this case. Another issue I had, though it's a smaller one, is that Maleficent and Pete barely do anything in the story. Wasn't Maleficent one of the major antagonists of the last game? Legit, she puts up some vines in Disney Castle, revives Oogie Boogie but leaves after he's a dick, shows up during the big battle of Hollow Bastion / Radiant Guardian, and then fucks off until the end of the game where she takes on the Heartless while Zora deals with Xemnas. Now, I get that the idea is that the organization is such a problem here that even the likes of Maleficent have to work together with the heroes to stop them, but the way this was executed is so poor to me, and it honestly feels like she just wasn't needed here. Like, what would change if Maleficent was removed from this game? Oogie Boogie doesn't come back? Oh no, not the second worst boss fight in the game. The Disney Castle stuff? Pete was effectively dealing with the Timeless River shit, so just have him do it. The bit at Hollow Bastion? Someone else can teleport the trio away, or something just happens that forces them to retreat. The final world where she takes on the massive army of darkness? Again, Pete can probably handle that. So, yeah, Maleficent feels wasted here. And that also drags down Pete, since he's effectively Maleficent's lackey, despite arguably doing more than she does in this game. Not much more, but it's something. Now, I'd say that this issue got fixed in 3, but that would be a lie, as the two are just going around looking for a black box. I fucking hate it here! Oh my god! But I digress. Outside of that, a lot of the other issues I have with the game are basically just nitpicks. This game is fucking incredible, and it still holds up even after all these years. It improves on so many aspects from the original, from the gameplay, to graphics, to audio, while also adding in some new stuff that works really well for the most part. Oh, right, I almost forgot, and was too lazy to reinsert the slate. What do you mean that wasn't supposed to be right? They heavily refined the gummy ship missions to be action-packed and flashy than it was in the original. You can heavily customize the gummy ship, give it new projectiles and types of attacks while in combat, give it abilities, do extra hard missions under certain conditions. It's incredibly fun, and a massive improvement over the gummy ship missions from the very first game. There's a lot more that I could say, but even now I feel like I'm going on for far too long, so before I close out, here's one last tangent/diatribe. Kingdom Hearts 2 is one of the best games I've ever played. From its story that kept me invested from start to finish, to the addictive, fast, and hard-hitting gameplay, to the fantastic visuals and soundtrack, this game has all the hallmarks of what a sequel should do. Take what worked in the original and make it even better, while also improving on what didn't work to make an even better experience for people than what they got from the first. But yeah, this game is fucking incredible. However, that does raise a question that's been asked for a while now. Is KH2 better than 3? It's been a debate since that game finally came out, so here's my viewpoint on the matter.
Both is good.
And KH4 is also an incredible game, just as great as 2 and 3, but I'm not going to spend too much time on that because other realities haven't gotten the game yet. Speaking of time though, I think it's time I close the curtains on this, so thank you all so much for watching. I genuinely appreciate your support after all these years. You're all incredible. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and take care.